Imagine a train loaded with 91 kilograms of gold, locked, guarded, and trusted to reach its destination. But when it arrives in Paris, the gold has vanished, replaced with heavy lead blocks. No alarms, no witnesses, just silence. How could such a perfect crime happen in 1855? Who were the masterminds behind it? And where did the gold disappear? This is the story of one of history's most brilliant and daring heists, a mystery that stunned Europe and still leaves us in awe. Chapter 1. The Golden Opportunity. The story of the Great Train Robbery of 1855 begins with the perfect conditions that created an opportunity for one of the most famous and sophisticated crimes of the 19th century. In 1853, the Crimean War broke out between the Russian Empire and an alliance of France, Britain, the Ottoman Empire, and Sardinia. This war strained the economies of both Britain and France as they had to fund large-scale military campaigns. Gold bullion became the most critical resource to support war expenditures because it was a universally trusted form of currency. Why gold? At that time, paper currency was not widely accepted across Europe. Governments relied heavily on gold to pay troops, purchase supplies, and trade internationally. Britain and France were allies, and to support each other economically, they frequently transported gold bullion between London and Paris. The frequency of shipments. Large consignments of gold were sent via railway and ferry systems multiple times a month, making this a predictable operation that criminals could study. The gold bullion was transported from the Bank of England in London to the Boulogne-sur-Mer in France. The route had multiple steps. The gold would be carefully loaded into strong boxes or chests at the Bank of England. It was then placed into a guarded railway compartment, commonly called the guard's van, of a southeastern railway train bound for the port city of Folkestone. From Folkestone, the train's cargo would be transferred onto a cross-channel ferry to Boulogne, France. Once in France, the gold continued its journey by train to Paris. The entire operation was well established and known to involve extremely valuable shipments. To understand why this shipment was so significant, it is important to look at the sheer value of gold in 1855. The consignment in question weighed approximately 91 kilograms, 200 pounds, of pure gold bullion. In 1855, 1 kilogram of gold was worth around 2,600 pounds. This meant the entire shipment's value was close to 237,000 pounds at that time, equivalent to tens of millions in today's currency when adjusted for inflation. For perspective, during the mid-19th century, 237,000 pounds could fund an entire military campaign or support the construction of massive infrastructure like railways or bridges. Although the heist itself would happen later, the seeds of the plan were sown during these gold transports. Among those who noticed the flaws in the system was Edward Agar, a notorious yet brilliant criminal who had a history of exploiting loopholes. Agar was a skilled forger and had connections within the criminal underworld of London. His expertise lay in observing systems, identifying weaknesses, and devising clever ways to exploit them. By 1855, Agar had already begun to study the railway gold transport system, learning about the guards, locks, and schedules. He realized that the guards were complacent, the locks were vulnerable, and the predictability of the route provided the perfect opportunity for a meticulously planned crime. Several factors aligned to make 1855 the ideal moment for such a crime. Economic stress. With both Britain and France focused on funding the Crimean War, authorities paid little attention to the security of gold shipments. Growing criminal networks. London was becoming a hub for sophisticated criminals like Agar, who had both the skills and resources to carry out high-level heists. Technological gaps. Railway systems were modern, but lacked the technological safeguards seen today, such as tamper-proof locks or secure compartments. Chapter 2. The Secret of the Railway Guards. The success of the Great Train Robbery of 1855 hinged not only on the weaknesses of the security system, but also on the role of railway guards, their routines, and the trust placed in them. In the mid-19th century, railway guards were integral to train operations and passenger safety. The guards performed multiple duties, often far exceeding what a single person could efficiently manage. Cargo supervision. Guards were responsible for overseeing valuable cargo, such as gold shipments, mail, and other precious goods placed in the guard's van. This van, located at the rear of the train, served as a secure compartment for sensitive items. Passenger safety. Guards had to monitor passenger behavior, address emergencies, and ensure a smooth journey. Signal management. Guards were tasked with monitoring signals during the train journey to avoid accidents. They communicated with station operators when needed. Documentation. Keeping records of cargo, its destination, and any incidents during transit was another key responsibility. A major flaw in the security system was the complacency of railway guards. This complacency arose from several factors. Routine nature of gold transport. Gold shipments had occurred without incident for years. Guards assumed the routes were safe and did not expect a robbery. Trust in the system. Guards relied on the idea that no one would dare to tamper with a high-value shipment. The reputation of the railway companies as secure institutions further reinforced their confidence. Lack of surveillance. Guards often traveled alone in the van and did not have anyone monitoring their performance. This lack of oversight made it easier for criminals to exploit weaknesses. To understand why the guards were vulnerable, it is important to look at their working conditions. Long hours. Guards worked exhausting shifts that often stretched 12 to 14 hours a day. Their physical and mental fatigue made them prone to mistakes or lapses in vigilance. Modest pay. Despite their significant responsibilities, railway guards were poorly paid. Many guards earned just enough to survive, which left them unmotivated to go above and beyond in their duties. Isolation. The guards spent most of their time in the guard's van, cut off from passengers and other staff. This isolation created an ideal environment for a criminal to tamper with the strong boxes undetected. One of the most significant factors that contributed to the robbery was the guards' trust in the padlocks securing the gold bullion. At that time, the locks were seen as foolproof by railway authorities and guards alike. Simple iron locks. These locks were strong but used basic mechanisms. Skilled forgers, like Edward Agar's accomplice, could create duplicate keys with precision. No tamper-proof design. The locks did not show signs of tampering. Even if a thief opened and resealed a lock, it would not leave noticeable evidence. Lack of regular inspections. Guards rarely checked the integrity of the strongboxes or locks during transit. Their assumption that the system was secure played into the hands of the criminals. Chapter 3. The Mastermind. Edward Agar. Edward Agar was born in 1814 in a working-class family in England. Little is known about his early childhood, but by his teenage years, Agar began showing signs of rebellion and an exceptional aptitude for forgery and theft. By his mid-20s, Edward Agar had moved to London, where he fell in with the city's growing criminal underworld. Before the Great Train Robbery, Edward Agar was already a seasoned criminal. He honed his craft through smaller crimes that showcased his intelligence and attention to detail. Forgery. Agar specialized in counterfeiting documents, bonds, and banknotes. His skill with forging signatures and reproducing seals earned him respect in London's criminal circles. Lock-picking and key duplication. Agar became an expert locksmith, mastering the art of creating duplicate keys and breaking locks. At a time when locks were considered secure, Agar's talent gave him a significant edge. Previous heists. Agar participated in multiple burglaries targeting wealthy homes, banks, and businesses. These early successes funded his lifestyle and connected him with other criminals. He quickly gained a reputation as a man who could get into any lock and out of any trouble, a rare talent that placed him among London's most formidable criminals. Edward Agar did not work alone. To pull off large-scale crimes, he built a trusted network of accomplices, all chosen for their unique skills. William Pierce, a corrupt railway employee and Agar's most crucial accomplice in the Great Train Robbery. Pierce worked as a train conductor for the Southeastern Railway and provided Agar with insider knowledge about the gold shipment. Pierce informed Agar about the train schedules, guard routines, and security systems, giving him the critical details needed to plan the heist. Criminal connections. Agar's time in London's underworld brought him into contact with thieves, fences, people who sold stolen goods, and forgers. He could rely on this network to sell stolen gold and keep authorities off his trail. Agar's ability to gather the right people for the job highlighted his skill as a leader and strategist. Chapter 4. Cracking the Code. Duplicate keys. The gold bullion transported by the Southeastern Railway was stored in ironclad strongboxes designed to resist theft. Each strongbox was secured with heavy-duty iron padlocks. Design of the lock. These padlocks were sturdy with a traditional warded locking mechanism common in the mid-19th century. Warded locks relied on obstructions, or wards, inside the lock that could only be bypassed by a properly shaped key. Belief in security. At the time, these locks were seen as unbreachable. The railway authorities trusted them to protect high-value shipments, believing no thief could duplicate such keys. Single key system. Each strongbox had a specific key held securely by railway officials and trusted guards. Without this key, accessing the gold was deemed impossible. Agar, however, knew that no lock was invincible. The first step to executing the robbery was obtaining and replicating these keys. Pierce's position as a train conductor gave him unrestricted access to gold shipments without raising suspicion. Pierce's observation. Over time, Pierce observed how and where the guards kept the keys. He discovered that the strongbox keys were often in the possession of the chief guard and were securely kept during transport. Timing the theft. Pierce identified brief moments during train stops when the guard's attention would be diverted. This gave him a narrow window to borrow the key without being caught. Once Pierce managed to temporarily acquire the strongbox key, the next challenge was creating a wax impression, a delicate and meticulous task that required steady hands and precision. Materials. Agar prepared soft wax, a pliable material that could capture fine details of the key's grooves and wards. This wax was commonly used by criminals of the time to duplicate keys. Secrecy. The process had to be done quickly and discreetly. Pierce could not risk being caught with the original key missing for too long, as guards checked for their keys frequently. Impression process. Pierce pressed the original key firmly into the soft wax, ensuring every groove and notch was clearly imprinted. The wax impression was carefully removed, preserving the exact pattern of the key. Once done, Pierce returned the original key to its place without raising any alarms. Creating the key was only half the challenge. Testing it in real conditions carried enormous risk. If the duplicate failed, or if anyone noticed unusual activity, the entire plan would fall apart. Timing the test. Pierce carefully chose a time when the train was at a station stop and the guards were distracted with their other duties. Testing process. Pierce discreetly tested the duplicate key on one of the padlocks. The key fit perfectly and the lock opened without resistance. Verification. After confirming success, Pierce relocked the strongbox, using the original key to ensure no evidence of tampering was left behind. The successful test gave Agar and Pierce the confidence that their plan would work. The duplicate keys could now be used to access the gold strongboxes during the heist. Chapter 5. The Lead Bar Deception. Stealing gold bullion directly from the strongboxes presented a major challenge. The robbery had to occur during the train's journey, but if the gold was removed, its absence could be discovered immediately upon arrival at its destination. This would lead to a full-scale investigation, increasing the chances of capture. Edward Agar understood that the only way to buy time after the theft was to make it appear as if nothing had been stolen. The strongboxes needed to look undisturbed, and the weight inside them had to remain consistent. To solve this problem, Agar came up with a simple but brilliant solution. Replace the gold bars with carefully crafted lead bars. These lead bars would be cut and shaped to match the dimensions of the original gold bars. Lead was chosen because it is much cheaper and has a high density, making it heavy and close in weight to gold. This deception ensured that when railway guards handled the strongboxes, they wouldn't suspect anything unusual. The lead bars would mimic the gold in every practical way, except for their value. The success of the lead bar deception depended on precision. Agar and his accomplices spent weeks preparing the fake bars, gathering the lead. The first task was acquiring enough lead to replace all the gold bullion being transported. Lead was relatively easy to obtain, as it was commonly used for roofing, plumbing, and other industrial purposes in the mid-19th century. To avoid suspicion, Agar and Pierce collected lead in small quantities from various sources, rather than purchasing it all at once. Melting and molding. The lead had to be melted down and poured into molds to create bars identical in size to the original gold bars. Agar and Pierce built a small secret forge in a rented room where they could melt the lead without being disturbed. Brick molds. They created molds out of bricks and plaster to match the precise dimensions of the gold bullion. The process was laborious as the lead needed to cool slowly to avoid imperfections or air bubbles, matching the weight. Gold is denser than lead, so the lead bars needed to be slightly larger to match the weight of the gold. Agar used a balance scale to measure each lead bar against a sample weight equivalent to the gold bullion. Even small discrepancies in weight could arouse suspicion, so each bar was meticulously adjusted. Surface appearance. Although the lead bars did not need to look like gold, since they would remain inside the strongboxes, Agar ensured the surfaces were smooth and clean to resemble properly handled bars. He rubbed the bars with cloth and polished them lightly to remove any obvious markings or residue. Replacing the gold bars with lead during the train's journey required careful timing and coordination. Agar and Pierce worked out a step-by-step plan. Securing access. Pierce's position as a railway conductor gave him access to the train carriage where the strongboxes were stored. His job was to ensure that he could open the strongboxes without attracting attention, using the duplicate keys previously made. Carrying the lead bars. Before the journey, Agar and Pierce secretly loaded the forged lead bars into a carpet bag. These bags were common in the 19th century and allowed them to carry the bars without suspicion. The bars were heavy, but Pierce's experience moving cargo on trains helped them manage the weight without drawing attention. The switch. During the train's journey, Pierce would identify a moment when the guards were distracted, either during stops or while performing other duties. Using the duplicate key, Pierce unlocked the strong boxes one by one. Agar and Pierce quickly removed the gold bars and replaced them with the pre-prepared lead bars. The strong boxes were then relocked, with the fake bars inside, maintaining their original weight and outward appearance. After the switch was made, the next challenge was transporting the stolen gold bullion off the train and into a safe hiding place. The gold bars were carried in the same carpet bags that had originally held the lead bars. Agar and Pierce chose locations near railway stops to discreetly offload the stolen gold without drawing attention. The gold was then hidden in pre-arranged safe houses until it could be melted down and sold through Agar's criminal network. Paris shock. The gold is gone. The stolen gold bullion, cleverly replaced with lead bars, left England on schedule. After being transported via the Southeastern Railway, the strongboxes were loaded onto a cross-channel ferry bound for Boulogne, France. From there, they were forwarded to Paris by train. This process was routine, handled with confidence by shipping agents, bankers, and guards who relied on the strongbox's locks and the weight of the cargo. By the time the shipment reached its destination in Paris, the thieves had already bought themselves invaluable time. The gold was expected to arrive safely at the bank vaults in Paris. The boxes were brought into the banking facility for unpacking, and it was at this stage that the crime was finally discovered. Bank employees' routine. At the bank, employees began their standard procedure, inspecting and verifying the shipment. Strong boxes were placed on balance scales to confirm their weight before opening. The first shock. When the first strong box was opened, the staff discovered something astonishing. Instead of gleaming gold bars, they found dull, gray lead bars. The realization was met with confusion. Immediate double-check. Initially, the bank employees believed there might be some error. The locks were intact, and the boxes were sealed properly, so a mistaken shipment seemed more likely than theft. They quickly opened the remaining strong boxes, only to discover the same thing. Every single bar had been replaced with lead. The weight of the strong boxes had perfectly mimicked the original gold, which is why the theft had gone undetected up to this point. The discovery of the missing gold bullion caused immediate panic within the banking circles of Paris. The financial implications of the loss were enormous, as the shipment was valued at £12,000 in gold, a colossal sum at the time. The bankers' alarm. Senior bankers and officials gathered urgently to assess the situation. The discovery was unprecedented, and the sheer audacity of the crime left them stunned. Impact on trade. Gold shipments were crucial for international trade and currency stability. The loss of this shipment raised concerns over the security of such transfers. Speculation and rumors. Within hours, rumors spread across Paris. Whispers of a massive theft led to speculation. Was it an inside job? Had pirates or bandits intercepted the shipment? Could this theft be part of a larger organized criminal network? The fear and uncertainty grew as the bankers realized that no part of the transport chain, neither the railway in England nor the ferry, had raised any red flags. Chapter 7. The investigation begins. The discovery of the missing gold bullion in Paris created an immediate chain of actions to identify the culprits and trace where the theft had occurred. French bankers, railway officials, and government authorities knew the heist's implications were vast. Alert to London, the Paris bank sent urgent telegrams to their counterparts in London, specifically Messrs. Abel and Company and the Southeastern Railway, demanding an investigation. French investigation begins. Parisian authorities launched their inquiry, examining the strong boxes, ferry manifests, and transport logs for any irregularities. Pressure from the banks. French bankers pressured the Southeastern Railway for answers, threatening legal and reputational consequences if the mystery was not resolved quickly. The tone of the investigation was serious and desperate. A shipment worth £12,000 was gone, and the system that had protected bullion transfers for years was suddenly in question. One of the first steps taken by investigators was to closely examine the strong boxes that had contained the gold. Locks and seals. The locks were inspected with forensic precision. Investigators were shocked to find they showed no signs of forced entry. The keys used to open them had been perfect duplicates. The seals were also intact, which baffled the team further. It was clear the boxes had been opened and closed again without leaving a trace. Lead bars as evidence. The lead bars were removed and carefully analyzed. Investigators noted that they were expertly cut to the exact dimensions of the gold bars. The weight of the lead bars matched so precisely that no guard, banker, or worker handling the boxes had noticed any difference. This discovery suggested that the theft had been planned with extraordinary attention to detail. The perfect condition of the boxes and locks raised a chilling question. Was this an inside job? The French and British teams began to systematically retrace the gold bullion's journey to pinpoint where the theft had occurred. From the Bank of England. The investigation began at the Bank of England, where the gold had been prepared and loaded into strong boxes under strict supervision. The boxes were sealed and locked before being handed over to the railway authorities. Bank officials confirmed that the gold was intact at the time of loading, ruling out any mishandling at the source. London Bridge Station. The bullion was loaded onto the Southeastern Railway train at London Bridge Station. Investigators questioned staff, including guards, porters, and railway officials. All workers reported that the boxes were handled carefully and placed securely in the guard carriage under supervision. Nothing suspicious had been noted during the loading process. The train journey. The train's guards were questioned extensively. They recounted the journey as routine. The strong boxes remained untouched during the trip. No unauthorized individuals had entered the guard carriage. Guards insisted they had been vigilant, but investigators pressed further, suspecting that subtle diversions or distractions might have played a role. The Channel crossing. Once in Folkestone, the strong boxes were transferred to a cross-channel ferry headed for Boulogne. French investigators interrogated ferry workers and examined shipping manifests. Staff reported no incidents during the transfer or crossing, as the boxes were sealed and showed no outward irregularities. Arrival in Paris. The boxes were received in Boulogne and placed on a train to Paris. All reports confirmed they were transported without being tampered with. As the investigation progressed, suspicion began to fall on the Southeastern Railway. Since the boxes were sealed and intact when they arrived in Paris, authorities reasoned that the theft must have occurred while the boxes were in British custody. Investigators began to consider that duplicate keys had been used to unlock the strong boxes. This realization pointed to an inside connection, as creating such keys required access to the original locks. Attention turned to William Pierce, whose insider knowledge of the railway system made him a potential suspect. Chapter 8. The Trail of Suspicion. Investigators discovered that Pierce had been absent from his usual duties on the day the gold shipment left for Paris. This unexplained absence, combined with his extensive knowledge of the shipment process, made him a prime suspect. As suspicion around William Pierce grew, a deeper look into his possible connections revealed another name: Edward Agar. It was suspected that Pierce had used his position to arrange the shipment, while Agar, using his specialized skills, had duplicated the keys to the strongboxes. The idea that they had collaborated made sense, as both had the means and knowledge to pull off such an intricate crime. One of the most important aspects of the investigation was tracing where the stolen gold had gone. The thieves had cleverly replaced the gold with lead, but where had the gold bars ended up? Investigators focused their attention on money transfers, property purchases, and other financial transactions that could reveal a link between the thieves and their ill-gotten gains. French and British authorities examined the accounts of known criminal figures, including Agar, to see if any suspicious purchases had been made after the heist. While the gold had not yet been recovered, investigators began tracking assets that could have been bought with the proceeds. The investigation expanded to trace money transfers between London and Paris. Investigators discovered odd transfers to various banks, but none of them seemed to involve any direct exchange of gold. However, the possibility of money laundering through multiple channels raised concerns. French officials, working with their British counterparts, looked into the banking habits of Agar and his associates. Although direct proof was elusive, the timing of the transfers suggested that the stolen gold had been used to finance other illegal activities, helping the thieves cover their tracks. Chapter 9. The Arrest. Edward Agar confesses. The authorities had been closing in on Edward Agar for weeks, and after a series of carefully executed investigations, they were able to arrest him in London. A key informant, who had once worked closely with Agar in the criminal underworld, provided critical information to the authorities. The informant confirmed that Agar had been involved in the planning of the heist and had knowledge of the operation's every detail. This tip-off provided the final piece of the puzzle. The authorities moved quickly, sending officers to Agar's residence, where they apprehended him without incident. Upon his arrest, Agar seemed surprisingly calm. He did not show any immediate signs of panic or resistance, which led investigators to believe that he was already expecting the arrest. His demeanor suggested that he had been preparing for this moment, which only heightened suspicion of his involvement. Once in custody, Agar was subjected to a series of interrogations where he remained mostly silent at first. The authorities were careful not to push too hard initially, knowing that they needed his confession to build a solid case. After hours of intense questioning, Agar finally began to open up, admitting that he had played a crucial role in the gold heist. The confession revealed a meticulous plan that involved both inside knowledge and criminal expertise. Agar explained that the idea for the heist was not his own, but he had been approached by a third party who was still unknown at the time to help with the execution. The third party had supplied Agar with the necessary tools and instructions, but Agar's role was critical. He was the one who duplicated the keys to the strong boxes. Agar confessed that William Pierce had played a significant role in facilitating the heist. Pierce, using his position at the Southeastern Railway, had access to the gold shipment schedule and was able to ensure that the guards were kept unaware of the replacement of the gold with lead. Chapter 10. The Trial and Punishment. After several weeks of intense legal proceedings, the trial finally reached its conclusion. The jury deliberated for several hours before returning with their verdict. Both Agar and Pierce were found guilty of their roles in the gold bullion theft. Agar was sentenced to life imprisonment for his role in the heist. The judge cited his involvement in the forging of the keys, the planning of the crime, and his cooperation with criminal associates as aggravating factors. Despite his lawyer's pleas for leniency, the judge made it clear that Agar had shown no signs of genuine remorse for his actions. Pierce, despite his denials and attempts to shift the blame, was also sentenced to life imprisonment. The evidence linking him to the theft, including his position as an insider at the Southeastern Railway and his role in providing vital information about the shipment, sealed his fate. Newspapers across the country published detailed reports of the trial's outcome. Some took a sympathetic view of the criminals, particularly Agar, portraying him as a man led astray by financial hardship. However, the majority of the press supported the verdicts, emphasizing the importance of protecting public institutions and ensuring that criminals who attempted to undermine the system were held accountable.